The moment Leah threatened to pull the partnership from Leslie's clinic, I stopped seeing this storyline as just another soap feud. This is no longer about professional disagreement. This is about control, about ego, about two women who are so intelligent, so emotionally guarded, and so dangerously ambitious that every conversation between them already feels like a chess match disguised as polite dialogue. And honestly, that's exactly why I think the Leah-Leslie dynamic could become one of the best rivalries Beyond the Gates has ever created. Not the loudest, not the messiest, the smartest, because what makes this storyline work isn't screaming or over-the-top betrayal. It's the tension underneath every scene. The feeling that both women are constantly calculating 3 moves ahead while pretending everything is fine. That's terrifying in the best possible way. Right now, the setup is already there. Grayson gets rejected from the volunteer program at Leslie's new clinic, and Leah absolutely explodes over it. But what fascinated me wasn't merely the anger itself. It was why she reacted so strongly. Leah wasn't acting like someone defending fairness. She was acting like someone protecting access. That changes everything. At first glance, the situation seems simple. Derek rejects Grayson because he doesn't trust him. Leslie assumes Derek is acting emotionally because Ashley is involved with Grayson romantically. Classic misunderstanding, right? Except I don't think it's that simple at all. Derek's suspicion actually makes logical sense. That's what makes the conflict so interesting. In a show where people constantly make emotional decisions, Derek may ironically be the only person reading the situation correctly. He sees something off about Grayson, something unreliable, maybe even dangerous. But Leslie doesn't care about that because Leah wants Grayson inside the clinic. And that is the moment the power dynamics begin shifting. Notice how quickly Leslie turns on Derek. She doesn't investigate further. She doesn't weigh both sides carefully. She immediately pressures him into fixing the situation because maintaining Leah's approval suddenly becomes more important than Derek's judgment. That's not partnership anymore. That's influence. And honestly, the most chilling part is how calm Leah remains while all of this happens. Leah isn't written like a typical soap antagonist. She doesn't need to dominate a room loudly because she understands leverage. She knows how to create pressure without appearing emotional. That's why her scenes hit harder than people realize. When she tells Leslie the partnership could be canceled if changes aren't made, it doesn't feel impulsive. It feels strategic, calculated, like she already anticipated resistance and prepared consequences in advance. Meanwhile, Leslie is walking straight into a game she thinks she understands. Now, let's talk about the plasma storyline because this is where Beyond the Gates could genuinely elevate itself from entertaining drama into something psychologically addictive. If the plasma ring becomes the dark thread connecting Leah and Leslie, this rivalry instantly evolves beyond personal conflict. It becomes a mutual corruption arc. And those storylines are always the most compelling because nobody stays innocent for long. I can already see how this begins. Leah introduces Leslie to the illegal plasma operation not through force, but through temptation. That distinction matters. Leah wouldn't recruit Leslie by threatening her. She would make Leslie feel empowered by joining. More money, more influence, more independence. Suddenly, Leslie's clinic isn't just a medical facility anymore. It becomes a gateway, a front, a machine generating power disguised as community outreach. And the scariest part, Leslie would probably justify it to herself at first. That's what makes morally gray storylines work. People rarely wake up and decide to become villains. They rationalize, they compromise one piece at a time. They convince themselves they're still in control. I think Leslie would initially believe she's using Leah just as much as Leah is using her. But she's underestimating who she's dealing with because Leah doesn't build partnerships. She builds dependencies. That's why I'm obsessed with the possibility that Leslie is never truly meant to be an ally in Leah's eyes. She's a shield, a future scapegoat, a disposable asset waiting for the right moment. And if the writers reveal that Leah always intended to dump the entire plasma operation onto Leslie if things collapse, Oh, that would be brutal. But more importantly, it would make perfect sense. Think about Leah's personality. She survives because she stays emotionally detached. She studies people. She predicts reactions. If authorities start closing in, Leah would absolutely sacrifice someone else to protect herself. The real tragedy is that Leslie probably wouldn't realize this until it's too late, at least initially. Because here's where the storyline becomes really interesting to me. Leslie is not weak. Manipulated? Possibly. Outmatched at first? Maybe. But weak? Absolutely not. And that distinction is crucial. What I love about this potential rivalry is that Leslie has the exact type of personality that could eventually become dangerous to Leah. Most characters around Leah are emotionally reactive. They panic. They lash out. They expose themselves. Leah thrives against emotional opponents because she remains composed while everyone else spirals. Leslie, however, has the capacity to learn. That's what could transform this from a simple manipulation storyline into a true cat and mouse war. Imagine the moment Leslie overhears Leah admitting she plans to blame everything on her if the plasma operation is exposed. Just imagine that scene for a second. No dramatic music needed, no screaming, just silence. Leslie standing there realizing every conversation, every deal, every reassurance was part of a larger strategy. That would be the moment she changes forever. And honestly, that that transformation could become one of the strongest character evolutions on the show because betrayal doesn't just create victims. Sometimes it creates equals. I actually think Leah's biggest mistake would be assuming Leslie will break emotionally after discovering the truth. But what if Leslie responds differently? What if instead of collapsing, she adapts? That's the twist I desperately want Beyond the Gates to embrace. Not good woman gets destroyed by villain. No. I want woman learns the rules of the game and becomes terrifying herself. There's a massive difference. And the reason this would work so well is because Leslie already has ambition beneath the surface. The show has hinted at it repeatedly. Her clinic isn't purely altruistic. There's ego attached to it, pride, a desire to build something powerful. Leah would simply weaponize those desires. But once Leslie understands the manipulation, the dynamic changes completely. Now both women are lying. Both women are planning. Both women are waiting for the other to slip first. That's where the rivalry becomes elite. Because the best television rivalries are never about who is good or evil. They're about who understands the other person better. And eventually, I think Leslie could become the first person who truly sees Leah clearly, not the polished version, not the controlled version, the real version. And Leah would hate that. Let's also talk about Derek for a moment because I think people are overlooking how important he could become in this entire storyline. Ironically, Derek may end up being the first domino. Right now, Leslie dismisses his concerns because she thinks jealousy over Ashley is clouding his judgment. But what if Derek's instincts are completely accurate? What if Grayson really IS connected to something darker involving plasma? Then Leslie forcing Derek to reverse the decision becomes tragically ironic. She would essentially be helping open the door to her own destruction. That's good writing, because the consequences would emerge naturally from character choices rather than random plot twists. And honestly, Derek being pressured into apologizing to Leah might become one of the most important warning signs in retrospect. He's basically being taught that intuition and caution are less valuable than maintaining appearances and alliances. That's how corruption spreads in these stories. Not through giant shocking moments. Through small compromises people convince themselves are temporary. Another thing I find fascinating is the possibility that Leslie secretly connects to someone from Leah's past. If the writers go there, this storyline explodes into another level entirely. Because suddenly this isn't just business manipulation anymore. It becomes personal history. Old wounds, buried revenge, and the best soap rivalries always become personal eventually. Imagine Leah discovering that Leslie has ties to someone who once betrayed her, abandoned her, or nearly destroyed her life. Suddenly, Leah's obsession with controlling Leslie gains deeper emotional context. Maybe she isn't just manipulating her for business purposes. Maybe subconsciously, she's replaying an older trauma through this relationship. That would add so much psychological complexity. And it would also explain why Leah becomes increasingly reckless around Leslie specifically. Because here's the thing, hyper-controlled people usually lose control only when something emotional cracks their armor. Leslie could become that crack, not because she's louder or stronger, but because she becomes unpredictable. I also think the show has an opportunity here to explore something deeper about power between women. Too often, television writes female rivalries in shallow ways, jealousy, romance, petty drama, but this storyline could be about ideology. Leah believes trust is weakness. Leslie still wants to believe loyalty can exist. That philosophical clash matters more than people realize. Because eventually Leslie may become exactly like Leah, or she may prove Leah wrong entirely. And honestly, I don't know which outcome would be more devastating. That uncertainty is why this storyline has so much potential. The plasma operation itself could also symbolize something bigger, survival at the expense of morality. Every character involved would have to decide what they're willing to sacrifice for security, influence, or ambition. Leah already made her choice long ago. Leslie hasn't yet. That's why she's the emotional center of this conflict. And maybe the darkest possibility of all is this. What if Leah genuinely respects Leslie by the end? Not loves her, not trusts her, respects her. Because Leslie survives, because Leslie learns, because Leslie becomes the first opponent capable of matching her psychologically. That kind of ending would be far more satisfying than a simple victory or defeat. Personally, I don't even think the best version of this story ends with one woman completely destroying the other. I think the strongest outcome is mutual damage, mutual exposure. Two brilliant people dragging each other deeper into paranoia until neither remembers where the original conflict even began. That's the kind of rivalry audiences obsess over. Not because it's flashy, because it feels dangerous. And if Beyond the Gates truly commits to this direction, the Leah Leslie storyline could become something rare for daytime drama, a rivalry driven not by chaos alone, but by intelligence, manipulation, and emotional evolution. A war where every smile hides a threat, every alliance hides an exit strategy, and every victory comes with a cost. Because the scariest enemy isn't the person who hates you, it's the person who learned how to think like you.